8 seconds in history. There we go. Hi, everyone. This is Margaret Hershey at Home with Hershey's, and thank you for joining us for our wellness talk today, Motivational Mondays with Margaret. And we've got some exciting stuff today. We're talking about burnout. Now, it's so interesting because most people believe in burnout. I don't believe there's such a thing. So we got some interesting discussions today. And one of my best friends has written, Frank Foss wrote a book on burnout and how he went through and what his burnout and how he came through the other side. So yeah, very interesting discussion. Thank you so much to Jess and Stacey for being with us today, and for Glenda for joining us, and all of you for joining us as well. So I think without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Stacey, who's going to introduce our guest speaker today.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And Lee, thank you so much for coming on and talking to us about burnout. I know this is a subject I really enjoy because I've experienced burnout in my life before. So I know that I will be getting some tips from you today. Lee helps professionals who've lost themselves in their career to reclaim a sense of self so that they can fall in love with work and life all over again. As an executive life coach with 20 years of experience in corporate human resources, Lee understands the intricacies of managing work and life effectively. She is passionate about empowering professionals who are on the verge of burnout to work smarter and live fuller. One of Lee's greatest gifts is her ability to listen deeply and question succinctly while bringing an air of playfulness to her work. Her love of adventure has led her to live and work on 4 continents, and she continues to embrace possibility and personal development in her business and life. She values integrity, learning, and trust, and is quick to find peace in the African bush or under the ocean. How lovely. Lee upholds the codes of ethics and conduct for the coaching profession as subscribed by Commensa and the RCF. Thank you so much, Lee. On to you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Stacey, Jess, and Margaret, and Happy New Year to everyone. It's amazing that it's the 10th of January already, and it's kind of, wow, we're here. And I wanted to start by just sharing a little bit about what burnout means, because for so many people, there's like this term that gets bandied about, and people are going, well, I'm tired. I'm tired. Does that mean I'm burnt out? And for me, it was a very ordinary Tuesday. I was thinking about a new job, and the more I thought about it, the more my heart seemed to close. My shoulders dropped, and everything seemed to, oops. Everything just seemed to kind of close down on me. Everything, like my body just said no. And I couldn't understand it because I'd always loved the work that I'd done. And I started kind of thinking about what was going on and did an assessment of what was happening for me. And it was amazing. It was like these puzzle pieces started coming together. And once I started forming a picture of what was going on for me in my life at the time, I suddenly registered that I didn't love my work anymore, and I didn't I didn't feel like I had purpose. And as someone who I'd spent, as Stacey mentioned, I'd spent 20 years working in HR, so I was always the person saying to everyone else, it's so important to love what you do. And I realized an integrity crisis. And through a process that I then started working on and began to unlock, I discovered what it was that did fuel me, that did make me kind of wake up again. And the more I thought about what I wanted to do, the more I had a visceral response to it. My shoulders went back and my heart opened and everything in me said yes. And that's the element that is missing when we're feeling burnt out, because burnout is like a relationship that's gone bad. We think about what's happening to us, and it's characterized by feelings of exhaustion, whether that's physical, cognitive, or mental, emotional fatigue. We're also quite cynical about stuff. So, when you're in a relationship that isn't going so well, your cynicism is heightened and you start kind of finding fault with things and feeling quite picky about stuff. And the other sort of characteristic of burnout is that you start feeling really inefficient. So, someone who's incredibly competent and normally like on the go, yes, able to do things, you suddenly go, I can't put one foot in front of the other. Like, what is wrong with me? And one of the most interesting things that happened to me is that I realized that I felt ashamed of what I was feeling. And it was such an awful experience. I can't tell you, because as someone who'd worked in a profession that was about serving others, I was like, how can I not know what's going on here? And all of that awakening to, okay, what is really happening, led me to understand that it wasn't just like an overnight process. It was something that had built over time. And I actually, for those of you who are on Zoom and perhaps on Facebook who can put into the chat, I'd love to know sort of right now, as we're heading into this new year after the craziness of the last two, what is a word that symbolizes for you how you're feeling right now, today, like the 10th of January. I know it's Monday, and very often we have that Monday blues feeling. Oh, Sharon, yes, overwhelmed. Oh, resilient, Kate, I love that. Oh, Margaret, excited, that's brilliant. Excitement, ready, recharged. Oh, isn't that lovely? That feeling of kind of being, we've had time to rest and can come back to where we are is I think it's quite critical. And the interesting thing is that we wait so long often to get ourselves to where we are so worn out that it then takes us even longer to become recharged. And Anissa says demotivated. I'm sorry, I know that space. It's not a pleasant feeling. It's not a happy place to be in at all. Calm and yes, of course you're allowed 2 words. You can have as many as you want. Calm and motivated. That's wonderful. And Laura and perhaps anyone else who's feeling calm and motivated as the antithesis to perhaps unsure, energized and a bit scared. What if you could kind of, and somebody mentioned resilience earlier, if you could kind of go, all right, what is the thing that's put me in this really good place? Is it something that's external, or does it come from inside of you? Generally. Inside. Yeah. Virginie, my faith. Rest, so important. And we don't give enough credence, to rest and sleep and rejuvenating ourselves. Okay, so there is a general sense that yes, that resilience, that kind of that magical grit, if you like, that takes us through some of the harder times comes from inside. And that's great, because it is, we can talk, and there I use the analogy often of kind of finding your flow and being able to move into whatever the circumstances are that are happening around you, and just be able to kind of embrace them and deal with them. Because life, if we use the analogy of a river, it's not just a smoothly floating stream all the time. Sometimes there are rapids, sometimes there are rocks that we need to navigate. And when we're feeling burnt out, it's like you can't even lift your arm out of the water to ask for help. And one of the things that I think fueled that shame for me when I realized that I was experiencing burnout is that I didn't know how to ask for help. And I want to say this: if you're someone who is feeling worn out, fatigued, all of those things, and you can't quite put your finger on what's going on, now is a really good time to start doing an assessment, because I think one of the hardest things that we can go through is to acknowledge how we're feeling and to actually own it and say, you know what, this isn't working for me. I don't like X, Y, Z, because denial is also a very, very strong factor. I know I spent, so my realization, this whole process that I went through happened to me in 2018. But I also recognized that for the couple of years before that, I had actually been unbelievably miserable and tired. And I wouldn't acknowledge it because I didn't want to think that there was anything wrong. And I didn't put the different pieces together because I just kept going, no, I'm fine. Anytime anyone said, how are you doing, really? I was like, no, I'm all good. Like so busy, got so much to do, but I'm fine. And I wasn't fine on the inside, but I was too ashamed to say otherwise. It wasn't, burnout wasn't something that was as openly discussed as it is now. And I ignored all the signs. I ignored the signs from my body. I ignored my emotions. I ignored the kind of that I had with, friends and colleagues. And I just went, I'm just tired. Really, it's fine. I'll get over it. And that place of being hard on myself just perpetuated that burnout cycle. Stacey, I know that your voice was kind of, I know you said a little while ago that your voice was kind of feeling a bit tentative, but you'd mentioned that burnout was something quite key for you.
Yes, I actually struggle with burnout. Just when I don't find a place where I can let go. So when I overcommit in my mind and I let my thoughts like ruminate and I put too much on my plates, then I definitely, and you need outs, and you've got to be intentional about having that out. And sometimes I'm not intentional. And so and I get sick at the end of the day. I'll get flu or whatever it is, but I'll get sick. And I know then that I'm burnt out. I need to take some time. I need to let go. I need to, just find my out. And when I do that, like when I make that a conscious decision, within a day or two, I'm a different person.
Thank you. That is.
So can I just say, to me, the two feelings that you get are shame and guilt. And those are the lowest forms of energy that you have. Of course, the top ones are joy and happiness. And right at the bottom are shame and guilt. And I think as soon as you start feeling that shame and that guilt, you know that you are not only feeling bad, but you're debilitating your body, because those feelings, that energy sucks the energy out of your body. So I think that you have to start saying to yourself, what is my aim? I'm aiming at joy and happiness. This is my goal. This is what I'm working towards. What will give me joy and happiness? And for me, one of my goals for this year was to, I used to hang around with a lot of people who didn't do it for me. You said, this isn't working for me. And a lot of my relationships with different people, it wasn't working for me. And I said, I'm just going to deal with people that I really like. And one of the people that I really like appealed to me to help her out. And she's actually Susie, who is the oldest playing a cricket player, a woman cricket player in South Africa. She said, please help me. They've told me I can't play at Kingsmead. I need to play there. I need to be able to have women's cricket there. And I also coach the blind cricketers, and they won't let me play there. And just through my husband and his connections, we managed to get them, and now they're playing there. And that to me is, that was what I needed to get me catapulted up to the next level. I think when you help somebody else as well, that joy and that from being able to help her out in that way, that joy made me just feel amazing, and I think that if you help somebody else, sometimes you get really involved in yourself, but if you can help somebody else, that was it. So happiness and joy. But tell us about this assessment. You said, if you're feeling like you need help, you take an assessment. Where do you get the assessment from?
Well, my recommendation is actually to do a self-assessment as the first step. It's to get, and it can be quite tough because we need to get really, really honest with ourselves. And this is where that denial factor and, what's really going on with me comes into play. But to do a self-assessment, to sit down and actually review where you are in your life and say, is this working for me? Am I feeling the joy and the happiness, or am I resonating at that level of, disappointment and disillusion and shame, or whatever it is? And when I think that it's one of those really delightful things, actually, is that it's like you do need to take the Band-Aid off, but once you do and you recognize what's there, you can start to take the steps to heal. And certainly being able to give and be of service to others is it's like it's vital to our health. But if we are not giving and serving ourselves first, then we have nothing to give. And that self-assessment to say, okay, and there are various things. There's a lovely tool called the Wheel of Life, and you can actually do an online version where
I've got mine. So Shane, I don't know if you want to put mine up just quickly and show it, or even if you
fabulous.
Put it, I don't know if you can, but I've got one that I work on, and I work on it daily because things change so quickly. You're up, you're down, you're in, you're out, you're feeling good, you're feeling terrible, so it's something that I do every morning when I do my goals. It's actually at the top of all my goals. That's the one that I do, and I assess myself on a scale of 1 to 10. So there's my health, fitness, my gratitude, my life vision, career, financial, social, parenting, love, relationships, spiritual life, character, emotional, and charity, which is your giving back. And I assess myself on that every single day. Is the wheel going around evenly, or is it going clunkety, clunkety, clunk? And if it's going clunkety, clunk, you're going clunkety, clunk too. So everybody, I'll put this up on my Facebook page, and you can do it and test yourself and check yourself and see where you are. So that type of assessment. But now say, you've done this assessment. I'm going to put this call to Jess. Jess, you've done this assessment. You see, this is where I'm really bad. I'm really bad. My emotions are in an absolute state. And, with a lot of women going through the change, they go through menopause. And I never did, because I had a hysterectomy on purpose. I said, I'm not going to do this, take this out. It's served its purpose. It must be gone now. But the women that I've worked through with, that have gone through menopause, have been up and down emotion. Now, I had a woman yesterday, as I told you, in my Silver Lake store, who bought 3 teaspoons and then threw them all around the shop and swore at everybody and then stormed out. So, they said to me, this woman's gone crazy in the store. What do we do? And I said, she's going through menopause. I can tell you right now, this is what she's doing. Because my friend did that a while ago in the store. She phoned me when she got home. She said, I'm so embarrassed. I don't know if I'm ever going to come back in your shop again, because I screamed at everybody. I yelled at everybody. And it was nothing to do with them. It was to do with me. I'm going through menopause. I just could not control my emotions. So Jess, when people are at that stage, they say, for instance, this is where my weakness is, it's emotions. When they phone you, do you make them do that other assessment, or how does it work? How do you find the person to look after them?
Yeah, I think, Margaret, as Lee mentioned, the biggest step is actually acknowledging that this is where you're at. So Lee had that aha moment of, actually, you know what, I'm not happy. And that's when she started doing the self-assessment. And I think the thing that people struggle with the most is not knowing, you feel off, you feel overwhelmed, you feel exhausted, but you don't know why. And of course, something like the Wheel of Life, the self-assessment, the whatever it is the start of your journey to finding that why. And then obviously, once you found the why, you can find the how to get better. So it is a huge and extremely important part of the process. So that's where we can come in and help guide people if they know there's something up, they're not feeling 100%, but they don't know where to begin. We can obviously help them with that. We've got a Burnout Questionnaire. We've got a variety of questionnaires, because sometimes it can overlap. Maybe it's anxiety, maybe it's depression, maybe it's burnout, whatever it may be. And then we can, of course, make suggestions in terms of our specialists that specialize in those areas. On the Connectable Life platform, our specialists designate their specialities. So, for example, Lee will be under burnout, and whatever it may be. So it makes it easy as the client to recognize what they're struggling with, and then to find somebody that specializes in that area, and that will be able to help them with that.
Okay, now Lee, so somebody comes to you and says, listen, I know I'm suffering from burnout. I've had it. I can't do anything. I can't even put one foot in front of the other. I don't even know how I'm going to get to you. But where do you start with them? What do you start saying to them?
So with the assessment, my realization through my journey was that there's a level of compassion that we need to start with. And I've created, it's almost like a 3-step journey of having compassion, getting clarity, and then having courage to create connection. So it's the 4 C's. And really it starts with understanding where your values are in or out of alignment with your life. Because sometimes we're operating, and our values change as we go through different phases in our lives. And sometimes we are pushing ourselves to achieve or do something that maybe isn't as important as it used to be, but we feel like, well, this is what I have to be doing because society says. And part of that assessment and sort of self-reflection is to say, okay, what is working for me? Where are my values sitting? And is this still appropriate? Because again, that self-awareness it's the catalyst to start something new. And then you start putting the puzzle pieces together to say, and I know someone asked a question, what are the physical signs of burnout? It could be everything from insomnia to a sense of apathy. Like I know people talk about Sunday night blues and then Monday blues and, oh, I don't want to be doing this. But if there's no like spark of joy, to quote Marie Kondo, if there's no little light that says, actually, this is something I'm really looking forward to, there is definitely something off. And Stacey mentioned getting lots of niggly little illnesses. That's a very clear indication. If your body is giving you pain, it is sending you a message. And what do? Most oftentimes we just go, yeah, I'm fine. I'll just take a pill. I'll deal with it some other time. And if we aren't paying attention to the physical signs of, insomnia, illness, a general sense of sort of meh, that like lethargy that says, yeah, I know I really should be exercising, but not now, not today. It's like there is just a sense of I can't find the joy or the energy or the inspiration to do anything. That's when the puzzle pieces must start coming together. And when you're snapping at everyone and kind of going a little bit hyper, I'm going to call it. So 1 minute you're terribly like lethargic and languishing in this space. And I know everyone's been in a kind of weird doldrums place over the last 2 years. But when you're there and you don't see any joy, any way to move forwards, that starts becoming a problem, because it's then countered with these incredible periods of such attentiveness where you go, it's like at 110%, and you just go full out. And then you kind of slip back into the cycle of, okay, well, I'm exhausted now. So you can't, there's no sense of maintaining any kind of, I want to say rhythm, any sense of sustained energy. It kind of goes in peaks and troughs. And then, your blood sugar's all over the place, your hormones are all over the place. You're not feeding your brain properly because you're likely eating crap, excuse me. Fueling yourself with, inappropriate, I say inappropriate, it's the tasty stuff that actually doesn't make us feel good long-term, but it feeds something in the moment. So it fills a hole, or it helps us feel better because it gives us a sugar high. And the assessment for me, putting the puzzle pieces together, was to say, okay, what are my values? How am I dealing with what's important for me? So what is my self-talk like? Am I chastising myself and denying that anything's wrong? Or am I going, okay, there's something for me to pay attention to? And then the other is saying, okay, if I'm really honest with myself, what is my mindset like? Do I want to fix this? Because, victimhood is a very, very powerful place. Yeah. And to stay in that space of, oh, woe is me, I can't do anything right, that also serves a purpose sometimes, as uncomfortable as it may be. And the mindset question that says, all right, am I prepared to do what I need to do to get out of this? Or, I'm just going to stay here. And it can waver. And that's why, to Jess's point about whether, there are underlying issues of anxiety and depression, these are all elements to consider, because burnout is not a disease, but it is
it's a state of mind.
Systemic. It's a state of mind, but it's also a systemic workplace issue that filters in. People talk about creating work-life balance, but there's no. I mean, that's the difficulty, is that when we're doing this all the time, trying to find the balance, is when we become exhausted. Whereas,
don't you think it's emotions? If you can control your emotions, you can take, I'm feeling this way, but I'm going to take control of this emotion. I'm going to take control of this emotion. And you control your emotions. You can be, I always say to people, don't run wild down the street yelling when you feel upset. So you have to be able to control those emotions and pull them into line. From Mind Power actually changed my life, because that teaches you how to control your emotions. It teaches you how to control your mind. And if you're feeling that way, well, I don't want to feel this way, so I will change and I will feel this way. But Stacey, when you were feeling that sort of I'm out of control type of feeling, how do you pull yourself into that? Wait, unmute.
Yes.
I believe very strongly in thinking about every thought that goes through your mind and taking hold of those thoughts and replacing them. If they're a negative thought, why am I thinking that negative thought? Writing it down, replacing it with something else, and creating a new narrative, and then deciding to live that new narrative. So for me, that's what I've done. I'm so glad that you spoke about two things, Lee. One, shame, that is huge. And I know it was about 6 years ago, I went through probably about a 3 or 4 month period where I just had these overwhelming feelings of shame, and I didn't know why. Like, there hadn't been a specific incident that had made me feel like that, but that was how I was feeling. And so that was an obstacle I really had to take hold of. I named it. I could see that I was feeling shame. I named it, and I decided, like, as a Christian, I went to the Bible. I got a whole lot of scriptures that spoke against shame, and God saying that He won't, He doesn't put shame on us. And I used that as my force as I was going to replace it, and that was incredible. And then you spoke about food. And that's something like so close to my heart, because I know also when I'm struggling, I have to go back and look at the food that I'm eating. And very often the food is an absolute alignment to how you're feeling. If I'm feeling anxious and if I'm feeling depressed, if I'm feeling burnt out, I know that my eating has also been not so great lately.
I also just want to add the feelings of shame and guilt. I think these are also feelings that can add to the burnout and almost create the burnout. We feel guilty to say no. We feel shame in saying to our boss, actually, I won't be able to complete it by Friday, but I'll have it done by Monday. And I think our boundaries, we feel too shameful and guilty to put boundaries in place in the workplace and our personal lives, that we just become people pleasers and we say, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, until eventually we pop. So Lee, I don't know if you want to add to that in terms of the relationship between boundaries and burnout.
Oh, and it's a huge one. It's a huge one. We talk very easily about boundaries, and to really get clear on, and this is not a kind of, it's not a selfish place. It's a big boundaries are there to keep us kind of physically and emotionally safe. And if we don't set appropriate boundaries, and again, it's a little bit like values, your boundaries can change. You can set new boundaries, or you can amend the ones that you had, or create kind of, I don't know, kind of a completely new set for yourself when you have a realization about something. But when we give over to other people's needs and make what's important for them the kind of the defining factor for us, we lose sight of what's important for us. And then it's like it's anyone's game. Then we can get lost. And there, there's a flexibility that needs to happen, because either if we have no boundaries, number one, like, people will take advantage of us, and we will be easily led into things that don't serve us. At the same time, if our boundaries are very rigid, and we don't have any flexibility, we can create such additional problems for ourselves, because then, compromise. I said burnout is like a relationship gone bad. I mean, compromise is such an important part of a relationship. There has to be a give and a take, a giving and a receiving always. Yeah. And if we are too rigid with our boundaries, that creates another set of problems. So understanding boundaries, being able to express them clearly, and being able to measure what we can do and then articulate it correctly. To Jess's point, saying to your boss, this is not the right time for me, but I'll be able to do it by Thursday. Does that still work? That is an important factor, because so self-determination theory talks about how we need to be able to feel like we have control over what we're doing. And if we are in a situation where we're micromanaged to the point that we can't express ourselves correctly, not correctly, but appropriately, if we are kind of losing any creative streak or not able to come up with new innovations and stuff, it's because we feel constricted all the time. And that sense of I can't grow, I can't do anything, and coupled with isolation, which and sort of unfair treatment, which has been very prevalent in the last couple of years, where people have felt so far removed from the people around them that it creates havoc within us, because we want boundaries, we have too many boundaries, we can't relate to people, and it creates this morass of pain very often that then I talk about being in the doldrums of burnout, because you're in that space where you want to feel different, you want things to be different, you want your relationships to be better and to have that spark of joy, and you can't move. And I loved what you said earlier, Margaret, about kind of finding the vibrations of joy and energy and happiness. But when you're in that space, it is way too big a jump. And what I often recommend to people is to just find a little bit of relief. Don't try and go from I'm burnt out and miserable to I'm joyful, because A, it's not going to happen, and B, it's not real. It isn't unless you are buoyed up by some kind of artificial something. It's not a natural process. So it's almost like you need to find a way to just help yourself feel a little bit better. And that could be moving from a place of sort of shameful and depressed to actually getting angry and saying, because there's like an energy that starts. I mean, as I say this, I start getting goosebumps, because you're starting to move yourself out of that place when you start to engage more with how you're feeling and being honest with it. So to actually get angry is not always a bad thing. It's obviously how you direct it is important, but to say, okay, I've got to start doing something to help myself feel better. And then you move through a process, eventually you'll get to perhaps disappointment from anger, and then maybe to a place that's a little bit more neutral, and then hopeful and optimistic. And, then you move to a place of joy. But you can't go from I'm exhausted and I can't think of anything to look, I like it. It's the whole world is great. It's not real at all.
I want to just go back to what Stacey said about thoughts. So thoughts become things. So you've got to control your thoughts. And that's what mind is all about. So if you have a bad thought, what do you do? Well, here we've got what's called the elastic band trick. So you put an elastic band on your wrist. The minute you have a bad thought, you let it go, and it's got to hit that vein. And as it hit my vein, the pain went right through my whole body, right down to all my toes and everything, but like that. So as that pain hits, your body responds to pain and pleasure. And as the pain hits, that bad thought goes out of your head. It's replaced with a good thought. You can only have one thought at a time in your head. So you place it with a good thought, and then when that bad thought starts coming back, you do it again. But your body responds to pain and pleasure. So as soon as that bad thought starts coming back after the third time, your body's saying, that was sore. And it won't let that bad thought back. It really works. I've stopped people from smoking. I've stopped people from drinking. I've stopped people from swearing, just using elastic band trick. So everybody, you've got to have courage to do it. It's going to do that. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is having courage to say no. So we all taught to be polite. And especially as women, we're taught to be nice and sweet and kind. Everybody must like us and be polite all the time. And my husband's a particularly polite person. So yesterday we're standing in the queue for our COVID test. And in Zanzibar, it's hectic because it's about 36 degrees here. You stand out in the sun. You've got to wait for an hour for them to arrive because they arrive late. And eventually I was first in the queue. And as I get there, a woman comes up to me and says, I've got this little girl with me who's about 14, and we'd like to go first because she's got to catch a plane today. Now, straight away, I knew it was a lie because it takes 24 hours to get your COVID test. And secondly, I thought, bugger, I've been standing in this hot sun for an hour. I'm not letting you go first. So I said, I'm terribly sorry. I've got things to do today. I got here early because I wanted to be first in the queue. And we are going in. My husband was cringing. He said, oh, shame, Margaret. Why don't you let her go? And I said, bugger that. She came late. There's a queue a mile long. She can't come to the front of the queue and say, I want to go in. She bluffed it was the 14-year-old girl. It wasn't. It was for herself. And she told this whole pack of lies to get herself to the front of the queue. So I said no. And should I tell you, I felt bad saying no. But I thought, I'm not going to do this because why should I let her come in? And she's obviously a strong person who's used to getting her own way. And she didn't like it one little bit, and she was muttering to the people behind her, muttering because she pushed in. But to actually stand up in front of all those people and say no to her, it took courage for me, and I did feel bad having done it. But afterwards, when I saw she was actually a con, I didn't feel so bad anymore. So I think as women, we have to have that courage to stand up and say, this is not working for me. And I've got a friend who now has just moved out of an abusive relationship. She said the courage that it took for her to get out of there was enormous, absolutely enormous. And I think you've got to draw on all that courage. And we all have that courage inside us. So, Lee, I'm going to ask you the question. When you know you've got to do something, you know it's going to take a lot of courage. You've got to move out of the home that you're in. You've got to go for a new job. You've got to do something that's going to take a lot of courage. How do you draw on that courage, and how do you get hold of it and pull it up and say, yeah, I'm going to do this? It's like hanging on to a lifeboat when you're in the back of a boat.
That's a lovely question. Thank you. And, I think for each of us, there is a different strength that we can draw on. Some of us, to Stacey's point, will find the courage through faith. Other people will say, that pain factor is now so big that it's like if I don't move, I'm just perpetuating the pain. So I'm wanting to move away from the pain. And courage comes in so many different forms. It can be sometimes a very big step that we take, and sometimes it can be something really what seems insignificant to other people, but is a huge element for ourselves. So that's where that kind of, I want to say that self-talk that comes back and says, actually, I can do this. Yes, it's hard. I'm acknowledging that what I need to do isn't easy, but it's like we need to become our own champions. We need to be our own cheerleader and say, I want to be able to do this, and I can do this, even if it's just taking micro steps. Because sometimes it's almost like, again, that kind of wanting to go from depressed to joyful. It's too big a step. But if we can say, all right, you know what? Just the smallest thing to help me feel better takes a lot of courage, because it is making a change, and change is uncomfortable. I don't care what anyone says, and yes, there are so many people who find change challenging and who find life challenging. And there is an element of, challenge. It creates that kind of, it's the thing that drives us forward. I mean, as a species, when we face challenges, we actually, you'll always find when someone has been through a really, really terrible experience and you say, would you change that? If you look back on it, hindsight being what it is, invariably people say, no, I wouldn't change it, because actually I had my biggest lessons from that. And that's where our growth comes. And that's part of what the nature of being human is that we grow and we find, new direction and new purpose. And that is what keeps us moving forward. So to draw on whatever is important for you in having the courage. And sometimes it can be as small as, I'm going to not eat sugar for the next week and see how that feels. That can take courage if you're feeling emotionally fragile, for example. Aileen says, courage is not the absence of fear, but doing what you believe in despite that fear. Absolutely. It's saying, I don't know where this is going to take me, but I'm going to take the first small step. And that, oftentimes we kind of expect there to be the bells and whistles and going, wow, look at this thing that I did. But it's a little bit like saying, nothing happened, nothing happened, nothing happened. And then you look back and you go, it's all different. How did that happen? And it's because it's the micro steps that help us kind of create change without it being a big blast. It doesn't need to be a big blast for it to be successful. And very often resilience comes from the little bits. It's a bit like changing habits. You need to do a little bit at a time, not jump, huge, vast distances. And I do want to just touch on very quickly some of the ways that we self-sabotage when we are either prone to burnout or facing burnout. And lacking clear boundaries is definitely one of them. The other is perfectionism and procrastination. And perfectionism, it means planning and working and reworking and checking everything down to the finest detail, and then berating ourselves because there was a tiny thing that didn't work or wasn't right. And that kind of constant critique, we can do a normal, we can question ourselves about the quality of the work that we do or what we're engaged in. But when we start critiquing it to the point of making us like freeze, because we have to keep checking and keep checking and keep checking, we're never going to take the next step, because we're going to have to make sure that everything is perfect in the first place. And that, yes, burnout is a systemic thing that comes from lots of different angles, but actually we can exacerbate it through the things that we do to ourselves. Mm-hmm. So not having clear boundaries, not being able to say no or ask for help. I love that example that you gave, Margaret, of saying, actually, no, this is what's important for me, and thanks. The perfectionism, and then procrastination. We can. I'm a master procrastinator. I can, but the interesting thing is that I have learned over time to turn procrastination into something positive for me. Now, this isn't going to be the same for everyone, because procrastination generally comes out of that fear. So we're stopping ourselves from having courage. But I decided to change my mindset about procrastination, because I know I do it, and say, okay, what does it bring me? And what I discovered is that, and I mean, I've been like this all my life. I'd wait and wait and wait and wait, and then get this blast of inspiration and go, okay, this is what I want to do. And I realized that, and this is going to be kind of anathema to so many people, because you're told all the time that consistency is key. And for me personally, consistency means boredom. I know it's a little kind of bizarre, but if I have to do the same thing over and over and over again every day, some people find that gives them drive and purpose. I find it wears me down. And I decided that, okay, instead of getting myself into that state that's kind of going, meh, it's like I then become reluctant to do this thing. I decided that I would use the procrastination element to fuel my creativity. And then when I feel inspired to do something, then my energy is there. And then I can bring that to the fore, instead of it being something that, I want to say I would lash myself with by going, okay, you know, you're not doing this, you know, you've got a deadline, you know, you must do it, you know, you must do it. And all that did was make me feel bad. And feeling bad is part of that entire entrenchment of burnout. Shame, and guilt. We can't get out of it. Yeah, it reinforces the shame and the guilt and all the negativity that just keeps us stuck.
Yeah. But I think you've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. When you're in an uncomfortable situation, you've got to say, I'm going to move forward. And I'll just say to people, you know, keep moving forward. If you keep moving forward, one of my staff said to me, he made a change and he said, this isn't working for me, I'm going to go back. And I said, you can't go back because you were there, you were not comfortable there, you've made the change, you've gone forward. Work through the pain to get to the other side. You've got to work through the pain to get to the other side. If you get to the other side and say, no, I'm still not happy, but you can't in the middle of it say, I'm going to run backwards. I'm going to be a snail and crawl into my shell and just stay there. You've got to get out and you've got to hit it. And as you say, when you go through those tough times, those are the times when you look back on your life, the times that you've grown the most, or the hard times when you've worked through them. So I think it's very important to work through that fear. So, and I think, you know, to me, stress is fear. You're only stressed if you're fearful that you can't move forward. So if you can say to yourself, this is stress, this is fear, what am I afraid of? Fear is false evidence appearing real. So, you know, let me just move through it and let's look at the facts. Because I think as women, we get very emotional. We embroider everything, you know, so it's huge. And when we actually cut the crap and get to the facts, we've got a very good financial director. He cuts all the crap, gets to the facts, and then we can move forward. So if you're just moving forward with the facts, it's so much easier than having all these emotions whizzing around. I know, Stacey, you're laughing. What do you think? You're an emotional person. I'm an emotional person. I have to pull my emotions in and control them. I feel like I'm reining in horses, you know, sometimes.
Yeah. Having those people in your life that can sift through it are key, I must say. Jess is excellent at that. She's very good at seeing what matters.
Yeah, I think to just get to things that matter in life, you know, as women, we like to have like stories around everything. And as somebody says on here, the TV, also we watch all these TV shows with all these things going on. I know I had to stop my mother from watching EastEnders, which is an English program, because you know, they fight all the way through it. And she used to want to fight with everybody. Finish watching EastEnders and come out for a Barney. I said, so that's not serving you. You're not watching EastEnders anymore because it's just puts you in this aggressive state of mind, you know. So I think we've got to control what we watch on television. I only read nonfiction. I don't read fiction. I want somebody else's to see what somebody else is thinking about. So I only read nonfiction, and I only really try and watch nonfiction type of stuff on the TV, so that this is real. You know, this is not what somebody's made up. This is real. So I think that's really, really important. I don't watch the news at all. What's happening in America and Australia and Afghanistan has got nothing to do with me. So long as my vision is right, my life is right, my goals are set, I'm working forward in the direction of my goals. And I think to people on the show, you know, you've got to look at your goals every single day. You can't hit a target you can't see. It's so important. If you're going towards your goals, you won't have burnout because you know what you're driving for. But I listened to a very interesting talk now, and they said the biggest problem with burnout is that we used to be part of a tribe. And with all the stuff that we've gone through in the last 2 years, we've shattered that tribe and we're not part of a tribe anymore. And the strength of Hirsch's, which has gone from strength to strength during COVID, is that they kept that tribe mentality together. We meet every morning, we sing and dance together, we see what each other's doing, we're happy when we're happy, we're sad when we're sad, we all work together as a tribe. And I think that tribe mentality is so important. And that's why I love this. I love my women's groups and all that, because human beings feel like being part of a tribe. And I think getting the tribe together. And to all the women who and the men who are here, get your own little tribe together. So I've got mine and my women in business, my wow ladies, the entrepreneurs club, all the different little groups that I have. Those are my tribes. And that's what made me strong and kept me strong through all the COVID, the looting, the rioting, all the stuff that we've been through. So I want to ask Lee, how important is having a tribe? You know, when you don't want to feel I'm an island, you know, I'm an island. I'm doing okay, but I'll get to the top of the mountain, but I'll be all by myself. Horrible feeling. We like to be part of a tribe. And I believe that that's going to be the secret of us getting ourselves out of the situation that we're in.
We are very much made not to operate in isolation. As human beings, we are social animals and we absolutely need connection. Whether that's, you know, for me, it starts with connection to ourselves, but then to the people around us and the world around us. And having a sense of self and understanding who we are, then, you know, it's from an energetic level, we then are giving out the energy and the vibe that is going to bring kind of other people who resonate in a similar fashion together to us. And that
we
level
feed off
of
their energy as well. We want their
absolutely energy. We all do. And it's kind of, there's a very systemic understanding and process that, you know, everything is interconnected. And if we recognize that there is the interconnection and that we do, I don't mean this like nastily, but like we do feed off each other, we will, it's like it's self-generating. We start creating more connection and more synergy with each other. And that kind of, that lovely analogy of kind of everything in the web. Absolutely. And that's one of the things, you know, so people talk about clearing the fog, okay? And this is where kind of clarity and boundaries and things come into play. And fog stands for fear, obligation, and guilt. And if we can clear those things and be brave enough to ask for help, because yes, to Gisella's point, no man is an island, no person is an island. We need each other. We just do better when we're together, recognizing that there is this synergy, and that the University of Auckland, I think the technology session department did a survey in 2020, or I mean, they did it in 2019, but they had measured that in, I think it was May of 2020, 1 in 9 people were suffering from burnout, but, you know, people didn't talk about it. In December of 2020, it was 1 in 6. In April of 2021, so last year, it was 1 in 5. And by November of 2021, so 2 months ago, not even, it was down to 1 in 3. 1 in 3 people was experiencing burnout. And that's from kind of not being able to ask for help, feeling disconnected, feeling isolated, and, you know, maybe wanting to have the courage, but not being able to reach out, you know, and that being able to let go of the shame, that fear, obligation, and guilt, letting go of that stuff and saying, you know what, this is the space that I'm in. This is where I'd like to move to. I'm going to take the first small step. That's how we heal ourselves and we heal the world, quite literally.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we really do. Now, Stacey, just a quick wrap up from you on burnout, your experience with burnout, you're going through burnout. Does it happen once? It never happens again? You know how to deal with it? Does it keep happening? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that it's something that can happen as much as somebody allows it to happen. So to stay true to yourself, think about your thoughts. Like you said, I mean, another great point is, who are you hanging around with? What are you letting people speak into your life? I mean, that's massive. Not being an island, staying connected. I mean, where Gazelle said, I have noticed it's with the elderly, like that's huge. When you said that, I thought, oh my goodness, that is a massive point. I mean, COVID has affected all of us, but I mean, the elderly have been severely affected. I mean, people have been dying on their own. How sad. And so, we need to stay connected with the right people. We need to be conscious about our thoughts and thinking about these things. And when we're feeling weird, when we're feeling like our emotions, we either have too many emotions or don't have enough emotions, something is going on, and to ask ourselves what, and to try and catch it early. Don't let it get to the point where we are burnt out, you know, catch it in those early stages. See somebody, book a session with Lee. Lee, you are the perfect person to talk to. Thank you so much for today.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. It's been amazing. And Jess, just your thoughts on burnout and how to get over it?
Yeah, I think to Lee's point on the statistics, they say the next pandemic to come out of COVID is that of loneliness and burnout. I think with everybody working from home, it's suddenly blurred working hours. There was this, I think there's also a really great sense of instant gratification these days with everything being so quick and easy on your phones. So it kind of feels like you are constantly online, and as long as you're online, you're working. So I think we just need to bear in mind that this is what we're facing is through all through the 2 years of this constant uncertainty, constant stress, financial stress, people losing their jobs, health stress, people losing their lives. I think people are starting 2022 a little bit more apprehensive than we've started previous years. I don't think everybody has that fresh start feeling, that hopeful feeling. So maybe to start the year by just asking yourself something as simple as, am I happy? And if the answer is no, what are you going to do about it? Decide now to do something about it. And if you are happy, could you be happier? Because I think we could always do something to be happier and to be healthier, and to just decide today on the 10th of January, 2022, that you are going to change that, to better yourself and better your life. And to just remember that although we've all been in separate boats, I know there was a meme going around about the COVID times and with the boat being out at sea, and just to remember that although we're all in the same storm, we're all in different boats, but just to remember that that sense of community is what we are built in, and that whatever it is that you're feeling, you are definitely not the only one to be feeling it. So we're in it together, and we're always here.
Okay, yeah, and I think that your emotions are the most important thing. And next week, we've got Candace King talking about navigating your emotions so that you can control your emotions, that you know how to handle it and you know what to do with yourself. Lee, just a quick wrap up from you on today, burnout, and your advice to everybody who thinks they might be going through it.
Thank you. Number one, thank you for the opportunity to share in this space. It was a process, understanding that I had suffered from burnout and didn't want to acknowledge it for a long time, put me into a very tentative place, if you like. And now understanding, if I will say this, the thing that I'm probably most grateful for is that I recognized what was happening for me pre-COVID, because to have experienced what I went through in these last 2 years, I think would have been awful. So my heartfelt kind of, not sympathy, that's not the word I'm looking for, but I want to offer or invite people who are in that space of burnout to recognize, if you can right now, that yes, you're in an awful place, and yes, there is a way to feel better. I know what it's like to be in that space where you just don't see anything changing and anything feeling good. But if you are compassionate towards yourself and really kind in how you approach what it is that you're wanting to do, and by kind, I mean being kind to yourself first, whether it's through your thoughts, your mindset, whatever your approach, being kind to yourself is going to get you the furthest. It will absolutely bring you to a place of joy.
Absolutely. And Lee, thank you so much for being our guest speaker today. We really appreciate it. Thank you to Jess and Stacey for carrying on and just finding us all these amazing people to speak to us. Thank you for Glenda for putting it together. Thank you to Shane, who's actually on leave and came in today. And happy birthday to Shane for tomorrow. And have a wonderful, wonderful week, guys. So we're talking next week, Candace King, talking about your emotions, how to control them, how to know how to make them work for you, not against you. Thank you so much for being on the show today. We really appreciate all of you. Have a wonderful, wonderful week. See you next week, girls. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.